The emergency lights cast red shadows across the research station's corridors as Dr. Sarah Chen pressed her back against the cold metal wall. Her breath came in short gasps, each one visible in the frigid air. The heating systems had failed 3 hours ago, along with most of the station's other critical functions. Through the thick viewport beside her, she could see the ice-covered surface of Europa stretching endlessly toward the horizon. Jupiter hung like a massive orange eye in the black sky, its radiation storms crackling across the moon's thin atmosphere. Sarah had always found the view beautiful before. Now it looked like a tomb. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed from somewhere deeper in the station. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. The Kethvar hunting party had boarded 2 hours ago, and they had been methodical in their search. She had watched through security feeds as they cornered and eliminated the other researchers one by one. The aliens moved with predatory grace, their chitinous armor gleaming under the station's failing lights. Sarah clutched the data pad in her trembling hands. The research files it contained represented 3 years of work. 3 years of studying the ancient structures buried beneath Europa's ice. The discovery they had made just days ago would change everything humanity knew about the galaxy. The Kethvar couldn't be allowed to take it. The footsteps grew closer. Sarah forced herself to move, slipping quietly down a maintenance corridor toward the station's central vault. Her colleagues had dismissed her security concerns as paranoia. Dr. Martinez had laughed when she suggested they install better defensive systems. Professor Williams had called her overly cautious when she insisted on backup protocols for their data. None of them were laughing now. None of them were breathing now. The vault's heavy door came into view, its bioscanner glowing green in the darkness. Sarah pressed her palm against the reader and whispered her access code. The massive door unsealed with a soft hiss, revealing the chamber beyond. Banks of quantum storage units lined the walls, containing not just their research but backup copies of humanity's most important scientific discoveries. Sarah sealed herself inside and activated the vault's independent life support. The Kethvar would assume she had fled to the surface or hidden in one of the outer sections. They would search those areas first, buying her precious time. She moved to the central console and began uploading the Europa research files to the quantum storage matrix. The alien structures they had discovered weren't just archaeological artifacts. They were weapons, designed by a long-dead civilization to combat something called the Devourers. The Kethvar were descendants of those same Devourers, though they seemed to have forgotten their own history. The upload completed just as something heavy struck the vault door. Sarah's blood went cold as she heard the distinctive whine of Kethvar cutting tools. They had found her faster than expected. She had maybe 10 minutes. Before they breached the door, Sarah accessed the station's communication array and began composing an encrypted message to Earth. Her fingers flew across the holographic interface as she attached the research files and her own analysis. The Kethvar had been systematically destroying human colonies in this sector, claiming they were cleansing worlds of contamination. Now Sarah understood why. They were trying to prevent humanity from discovering what lay beneath Europa's ice. The cutting tools grew louder. Sparks began to shower from the vault door as the aliens worked to breach its defenses. Sarah initiated the message transmission and watched the progress bar crawl forward. 60%. 70%. The Kethvar were through the outer layer now. Sarah moved to a secondary console and began accessing the station's self-destruct protocols. If she couldn't escape, she would make sure the aliens learned nothing from their attack. Her hands shook as she entered the authorization codes. She thought of her sister back on Earth, of the nieces and nephews she would never see again. 85% transmission complete. The vault door glowed cherry red along its edges. Sarah could hear the aliens speaking in their harsh, clicking language. They sounded excited, anticipating their victory. She pulled up the surveillance feeds from outside the vault. 3 Kethvar warriors stood before the door, their 6 arms working various cutting tools with practiced efficiency. Their leader, distinguished by additional spines along his carapace, gestured impatiently at his subordinates. Sarah recognized him from the intelligence briefings. Commander Thakmor, known throughout human space as the Harvester. He had personally overseen the destruction of 17 human colonies. His troops called him Apex Predator in their own language, a title he wore with pride. 95% transmission complete. The inner layer of the vault door began to glow. Sarah estimated she had less than 3 minutes before they broke through. She activated the self-destruct sequence and set the timer for 2 minutes. Whatever happened, the Kethvar would find nothing but ashes. The transmission reached 100% just as the vault door finally gave way. The massive barrier crashed inward, revealing the 3 alien warriors in their predatory glory. Their compound eyes glittered in the emergency lighting as they scanned the chamber. Commander Thakmor stepped forward, his mandibles clicking in what Sarah knew was amusement. He spoke in accented but clear English, his voice like grinding stone. "Dr. Sarah Chen, we have been monitoring your communications. You are the lead researcher on this pathetic outpost." His secondary arms gestured dismissively at the vault's contents. "Your species builds such fragile shells to protect such insignificant treasures." Sarah straightened, forcing herself to meet the alien's gaze. "The data is already gone. I transmitted everything to Earth before you breached the door." Thakmor's mandibles spread wider in what might have been a smile. "You speak of transmissions as if they matter. Your communication arrays have been under our control since we arrived. Every signal has been redirected to empty space." He paused, savoring her expression of horror. "Your final message was sent nowhere, little human. You have achieved nothing." The self-destruct timer showed 40 seconds remaining. Sarah kept her face carefully neutral, not allowing the alien to see her remaining card. She had achieved something after all. She had confirmed that the Kethvar were not invincible. They had made mistakes, grown overconfident. That overconfidence would be their downfall. Nothing to say? Thakmor stepped closer, his razor-sharp claws extending. "Perhaps you would prefer to die knowing your species' fate. We have located your homeworld, Dr. Chen. Soon Earth will burn as all human worlds burn." Sarah smiled, and for the first time since the attack began, she felt calm. "Tell me, Commander, in all your victories and all the worlds you've harvested, have you ever encountered a species that fought back?" The confusion in Thakmor's compound eyes was answer enough. The timer reached 0. The explosion tore through the research station like a vengeful star. Sarah's consciousness flickered in and out as the blast wave threw her against the vault's rear wall. Emergency containment fields activated automatically, creating a small pocket of survivable atmosphere within the devastation. The quantum storage units, built to withstand anything short of a direct nuclear strike, remained intact within their protective shells. Through the ringing in her ears, Sarah heard something impossible. Screaming. Not human screaming, but the harsh, chittering cries of injured Kethvar. She forced her eyes open and saw Commander Thakmor writhing on the floor, his chitinous armor cracked and leaking blue-green fluid. One of his warriors lay motionless while the third struggled to reach his communication device. Sarah's training kicked in despite her injuries. She rolled toward the nearest storage unit and pulled herself upright. The blast had damaged the vault systems, but the quantum cores were still active. More importantly, the explosion had revealed something the Kethvar hadn't expected. Humans didn't just surrender when cornered. They made their enemies pay a price. Thakmor's compound eyes focused on her with hatred and something else. Respect. You destroyed your own research. Your own people's future, Sarah coughed, tasting blood. "I sent more than just research data in that transmission, Commander. I included tactical analysis of your boarding procedure, your equipment specifications, and your personal command patterns." She paused, letting the words sink in. "Your overconfidence made you sloppy." The surviving Kethvar warrior finally reached his communicator. Sarah listened as he spoke rapidly in his native language, calling for emergency extraction. But something was wrong. Instead of acknowledgement from his ship, only static answered his calls. Sarah smiled through her pain. "Having trouble reaching your friends?" Thakmor struggled to his feet, his movements unsteady. "What have you done?" The quantum storage matrix was connected to the station's main communications array. "When I uploaded our files, I also downloaded something much more interesting." Sarah activated a wall display that flickered to life despite the damage. "Your ship's command codes, transmitted in clear text because you never expected anyone to be listening." The display showed the exterior of the research station. The Kethvar assault vessel hung motionless in Europa's thin atmosphere, its running lights dark. As they watched, small explosions began blooming along the ship's hull as its own systems turned against it. "Impossible." Thakmor's voice carried a note of disbelief. "Our encryption protocols are unbreakable." "Maybe by other species." Sarah pulled herself fully upright, ignoring the pain in her ribs. "But you made one critical error. You assumed human technology was primitive because our ships are smaller, our weapons less advanced. You never considered that we might be better at adapting. The truth was more complex than Sarah let on. Human encryption-breaking technology wasn't superior to the Kethvar's security systems. But humans had something the aliens lacked. Desperation bred from centuries of struggling against larger, stronger opponents. When faced with extinction, humanity had learned to fight with every available tool, no matter how unconventional. Through the vault's damaged walls, Sarah could hear the distant rumble of the Kethvar ship's death throes. The massive vessel was breaking apart, its crew lost to the void. She felt no satisfaction in their deaths, only grim determination. This was just the beginning. Thakmor advanced on her, his claws extended despite his injuries. You have won nothing, human. This was merely a scouting force. The main fleet will arrive within days. I'm counting on it. Sarah backed toward the quantum storage units. Do you know what made humans the dominant species on our world, Commander? It wasn't size or strength or natural weapons. It was our ability to learn from every defeat, every loss, every small victory. She activated an emergency protocol she had hidden within the storage matrix weeks ago. The units began uploading their contents to a series of automated probes hidden throughout the Europa system. Even if the station was completely destroyed, the information would survive. Your kind will be extinct within a generation, Thakmor snarled, still advancing. The Devourer fleets number in the millions. Your entire species commands perhaps 1,000 ships. Numbers aren't everything. Sarah's hand found the emergency beacon she had been reaching for. Sometimes all it takes is one person who refuses to quit. The beacon activated with a soft chime, transmitting a coded signal that would reach every human settlement within 50 light years. The message was simple. The Kethvar were coming, but they could be beaten. Their ships could be hacked, their commanders could be outmaneuvered, and their overconfidence could be turned against them. Thakmor lunged forward with surprising speed for such a large creature. His claws raked across Sarah's shoulder, drawing blood, but she twisted aside and activated another hidden system. Emergency blast shields slammed down between them, trapping the wounded commander on the other side of the vault. You cannot hide forever, human. Thakmor's voice echoed through the walls. My ship may be destroyed, but the fleet will arrive. They will find your corpse and learn nothing. Sarah pressed her back against the blast shield and slid to the floor. Her injuries were worse than she had initially thought, and she could feel her strength ebbing. But she had accomplished more than she had dared hope. The research was safe, the tactical data was transmitted, and the Kethvar had learned that humans were not the easy prey they expected. You're right about one thing, she called back to Thakmor. I probably won't live to see the end of this war. But my species will remember what happened here. We'll study every detail of your attack, learn from your tactics, and adapt our defenses. She accessed the station's historical database and began recording a detailed account of the battle. Her voice grew weaker with each word, but she forced herself to continue. Future generations needed to know exactly how the Kethvar had been defeated, even if it was just a single ship. The key is their overconfidence, she said into the recorder. They see us as inferior and don't take proper precautions. Their command structures are rigid, making them vulnerable to communications disruption, and they have no concept of fighting an enemy that's willing to sacrifice everything. Thakmor had grown quiet on the other side of the barrier. Sarah wondered if he was listening to her final message. She hoped he was. She wanted him to understand that his victory today would ultimately lead to his species' defeat. The emergency power finally failed, plunging the vault into darkness. Sarah closed her eyes and thought of Earth, of the blue skies and green forests she would never see again. Somewhere in the black automated probes were carrying her research toward human space. The data would arrive ahead of the Kethvar fleet, giving humanity time to prepare, time to show the galaxy what humans could do when their backs were against the wall. In the darkness, she heard the sound of metal being torn apart as Thakmor finally broke through the blast shield, but it was too late. The damage was done. The seeds of the Kethvar's destruction had already been planted. Sarah smiled one last time before the darkness claimed her. Admiral Marcus Webb stood before the holographic display in the war room beneath Geneva, watching as automated probe after automated probe arrived from the outer colonies. Each one carried fragments of Dr. Chen's final transmission, pieces of a puzzle that was rapidly revealing the true scope of the threat facing humanity. 37 probes so far, reported Lieutenant Commander Hayes from her station. all carrying identical copies of the Europa research data and tactical analysis. Dr. Chen was thorough. Webb nodded grimly. Sarah Chen had been his student at the Naval Academy 15 years ago. Even then, she had possessed an analytical mind that impressed her instructors. Now that same mind might have saved the human race. What's our assessment of the incoming Kethvar fleet? Chief Analyst Rodriguez looked up from his console, his face pale. Based on the probe telemetry and Dr. Chen's observations, we're looking at a minimum of 1,200 vessels. Possibly more. They'll reach our outer colonies in approximately 8 days. The silence in the war room was deafening. Humanity's entire fleet consisted of 800 ships, and most of those were exploration vessels or cargo haulers, hastily converted for military use. In a straight fight, they would be annihilated within hours. However, Rodriguez continued, Dr. Chen's analysis provides us with significant advantages. The Kethvar command structure is highly centralized. Their ships are powerful but inflexible, and most importantly, they've never faced an enemy that fights the way we do. Webb studied the tactical data scrolling across his display. Chen had been right about Kethvar overconfidence. Their attack on the Europa station had been brutal but sloppy, with obvious security gaps that a more cautious species would never have allowed. Recommendations? Commander Sarah Kim, head of the Special Operations Division, stepped forward. We can't match them in firepower, but we don't need to. Dr. Chen proved their ships can be compromised through their own communication systems. If we can get close enough to one of their command vessels, we turn their own fleet against them, Webb finished. How many infiltration teams can you field? 12 if we pull everyone from other operations. Each team will need to reach a different fleet group before they coordinate their attack patterns. Webb felt the weight of command settling on his shoulders. He was about to commit humanity's best special forces operators to what amounted to suicide missions. But Chen's sacrifice had given them a chance, and he wouldn't waste it. Do it. What do we know about their ground forces? Limited data, Kim replied. But Dr. Chen managed to record detailed scans of Commander Thakmore and his boarding party. Their armor is highly advanced but appears vulnerable to electromagnetic pulse weapons. Their reliance on technology might be their weakness. Webb turned to the fleet coordination display. Captain Torres, what's the status of our evacuation efforts? Captain Elena Torres, recently promoted after her ship had rescued survivors from 3 different colony worlds, looked exhausted but determined. We've evacuated 60% of the outer colonies. The remaining populations are either refusing to leave or can't be reached in time. Those people know the risks. Webb said quietly, we can't force them to abandon their homes. The truth was more complex than Webb admitted. Many of the colonists were choosing to stay because they believed they could hide from the Kethvar long enough for the fleet to drive them off. Others were staying to conduct guerrilla operations against any occupation forces. A few were simply too stubborn to run. Lieutenant Commander Hayes spoke up from her monitoring station. Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Titan Research Facility. They claim to have developed something based on Dr. Chen's data. Webb activated the communication link. The face of Dr. Michael Harrison appeared on the main display, his eyes bright with excitement and exhaustion. Admiral, we've been analyzing the alien artifacts Dr. Chen discovered beneath Europa's ice. They're not just weapons, they're blueprints. Instructions for building technology that can disrupt Kethvar neural networks. Explain, Webb ordered. The Kethvar are cyborgs, Admiral. Their natural nervous systems have been augmented with technological implants that enhance their physical capabilities. Dr. Chen's scans show these implants use a specific quantum frequency. If we can generate a counter frequency, we can shut them down, Kim interrupted, understanding immediately. How long to build a prototype? We already have one, Harrison said with a grin. We're transmitting the construction specifications now. Any ship with a standard communications array can be modified to broadcast the disruption field. Webb felt hope stirring in his chest for the first time since the crisis began. Range and effectiveness? Unknown. The artifact data suggests it worked against the original Devourers, but we have no way to test it without live Kethvar subjects. Harrison paused. There is one more thing, Admiral. The artifacts weren't built by a single species. They're a collaborative effort by multiple civilizations working together against a common threat. The implications hit Webb immediately. Humanity wasn't alone in the galaxy. Somewhere out there, other species had faced the Kethvar and survived long enough to build weapons against them. The question was whether any of those civilizations still existed. Dr. Harrison, how quickly can your modifications be implemented fleet-wide?
48 hours if we prioritize military vessels.
72 hours for the entire fleet. Webb made the calculation in his head. The Kethvar would arrive in 8 days, giving them time to modify most of their ships. But they would still be vastly outnumbered, and the alien disruption technology was untested. Commander Kim cleared her throat. Admiral, there's something else. Dr. Chen's personal logs mention that Commander Thakmor seemed surprised by human tactical flexibility. He specifically said they'd never encountered a species that fought back. That suggests the Kethvar have been winning through intimidation as much as superior firepower, meaning they might not expect organized resistance. Webb mused. Their entire strategy could be based on facing enemies that surrender or flee rather than fight. The holographic display updated with new probe data. Additional details of the Europa battle continued to arrive, each one providing more insight into Kethvar capabilities and weaknesses. Chen had died buying them this information, and Webb was determined to make her sacrifice count. All right, people, here's what we're going to do. Webb's voice carried the authority of someone who had made his decision and would see it through regardless of the cost. Dr. Harrison's modifications get absolute priority. Commander Kim, I want your infiltration teams ready to deploy in 60 hours. Captain Torres, continue the evacuations but also begin positioning our modified civilian ships as decoy targets. Sir? Torres looked confused. The Kethvar expect us to run. Instead, we're going to make them think some of our civilian ships are trying to flee, while others stand and fight. When they move to intercept what they think are helpless refugees, they'll find themselves facing ships equipped with neural disruption technology. Kim smiled grimly. A trap within a trap. They'll commit their forces expecting easy victories and find themselves paralyzed instead. Exactly. Dr. Chen proved that individual Kethvar can be defeated through tactics and technology. Now we're going to prove that an entire fleet can be beaten the same way. Webb looked around the war room at the faces of the people who would implement his strategy. They were tired, frightened, and facing impossible odds, but they were also human, which meant they would adapt, improvise, and fight until their last breath. Ladies and gentlemen, 8 days from now, the Kethvar will learn why human beings became the dominant species on one of the galaxy's most dangerous worlds. They're about to discover that attacking us was the worst mistake they've ever made. The Kethvar fleet emerged from hyperspace like a plague of metal locusts, their massive ships blotting out the stars around Proxima Centauri. Fleet Commander Zekthar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Hunger, watching as his subordinates began coordinating the attack on humanity's outer colonies. Report, he commanded in the clicking language of his people. Sub-Commander Velkan consulted his tactical display. 1,200 vessels in perfect formation, Fleet Commander. The human settlements appear to be in full retreat. Our advanced scouts report minimal defensive positions. Zekthar's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. This would be even easier than projected. The humans had proven troublesome enough to warrant a full fleet deployment, but they seemed to be following the same pattern as every other species the Kethvar had encountered. Fear, panic, and ultimately submission. What of Commander Thakmor's strike force? No contact since they entered the Europa system, Fleet Commander. We must assume they completed their mission and moved on to secondary targets. Zekthar nodded. Thakmor was reliable, if somewhat brutal in his methods. The loss of communication was likely due to the electromagnetic interference common in that system. The important thing was that the human research station had been neutralized before it could transmit any dangerous information. Deploy the hunting packs, Zekthar ordered. Standard intimidation pattern. I want those fleeing ships tracked down and destroyed. Leave one survivor from each vessel to spread word of our approach. The massive fleet began to separate into smaller groups, each one tasked with pursuing the scattered human vessels fleeing toward the inner colonies. It was a tactic that had worked flawlessly for generations. Show overwhelming force, destroy resistance, and let fear do the rest of the work. What Zekthar didn't notice was that the fleeing human ships were moving in suspiciously organized patterns, almost as if they were trying to lead his forces into specific areas of space. Captain Elena Torres watched the Kethvar fleet deployment from the bridge of her converted cargo hauler, the New Edinburgh. Her ship looked like any other civilian vessel fleeing the alien advance, but hidden beneath its hull were enough electromagnetic pulse generators to power a small city. Kethvar Pursuit Group moving into position, reported her tactical officer. 3 heavy cruisers and their escorts, just like Admiral Webb predicted. Torres smiled grimly. They're taking the bait. Signal the other ships in our group. Wait until they're committed to their attack run, then activate the neural disruptors. The pursuing Kethvar ships accelerated, their weapon systems charging for what they expected to be an easy slaughter. Their formation was perfect, their approach textbook, and their overconfidence absolute. On the bridge of the lead Kethvar cruiser, Sub-Commander Kralvex prepared to order the attack. These human refugees were moving more slowly than expected, practically begging to be destroyed. He would make their deaths quick as a gesture of mercy. Target the largest vessel first, he commanded, then proceed down the line. Leave the smallest ship intact for questioning. His weapons officer acknowledged the order and locked targeting sensors onto the New Edinburgh. The ship's massive plasma cannons began to rotate toward their targets when something impossible happened. Every Kethvar warrior on the bridge collapsed simultaneously. Kralvex tried to speak, tried to move, tried to understand what was happening as his augmented nervous system shut down piece by piece. His natural mind remained active, but the technological implants that gave him superhuman strength and reflexes had gone completely dead. Around him, his crew writhed helplessly as their own implants failed. The ship's automated systems continued to function, but without conscious control, the massive vessel began to drift off course. Neural disruptors are working perfectly, Torres reported to the fleet. All 3 pursuit ships are disabled. Boarding parties, you're clear to proceed. Throughout the star system, similar scenes were playing out as human refugee ships turned their hidden weapons on pursuing Kethvar forces. Ship after ship of the feared alien fleet found themselves paralyzed, their crews helpless against a technology they had never imagined possible. But Admiral Webb's plan was only beginning. The neural disruptors could disable individual ships, but they couldn't reach the entire fleet at once. For that, they needed the infiltration teams. Commander Sarah Kim materialized on the bridge of a Kethvar command ship as her team's stealth transport completed its approach. The ship's crew lay unconscious around their posts, victims of a carefully timed neural disruptor burst that had lasted just long enough for the boarding party to reach the bridge. Secure the command center, Kim ordered her team. I need access to their fleet communications array. Sergeant Rodriguez moved to the alien computer systems and began the hacking process they had rehearsed dozens of times. The Kethvar encryption was sophisticated, but it had been designed to keep other alien species out. It had never been tested against human ingenuity combined with detailed knowledge of their communication protocols. I'm in, Rodriguez reported after 30 minutes of careful work. Full access to fleet communications and command functions. Kim smiled as she activated her own communicator. Admiral, this is Infiltration Team Alpha. We have control of Fleet Sector 7. Awaiting your orders. Similar reports came in from 11 other teams scattered throughout the Kethvar fleet. In less than 2 hours, human special forces had gained control of the communication systems for nearly half of the alien armada. Execute Phase 2. Webb's voice came through the encrypted channel. Kim began typing commands into the alien computer system. To any monitoring Kethvar ships, it would appear that the command vessels were transmitting routine tactical updates. In reality, Kim was uploading a virus based on the same technology that had disabled Thakmor's ship at Europa. The virus spread through the fleet's communication network like wildfire, designed to activate simultaneously across all infected vessels. Within minutes, it had reached over 800 ships. Fleet Commander Zekthar was reviewing casualty reports when his tactical display began showing impossible readings. Ship after ship in his fleet was going dark, their crews apparently incapacitated by some unknown weapon. What is happening? He demanded of his bridge crew. Unknown, Fleet Commander, his communications officer replied, fear evident in his voice. We're receiving distress signals from across the fleet. Ships report complete neural system failures among their crews. Zekthar felt a chill run through his body. Neural system failures suggested some kind of biological weapon, but the Kethvar had extensive protection against such attacks. Their implants included filters specifically designed to prevent neural disruption. Signal all remaining ships, he ordered. Full retreat to Rally Point 7. We'll regroup and analyze this threat. But as his communications officer tried to transmit the retreat order, nothing happened. The fleet communications array had gone completely silent. On the bridge of the Eternal Hunger, Kim's infiltration team had taken control of the flagship's systems. The virus they had uploaded was now preventing any coordinated retreat, leaving individual Kethavar ships isolated and vulnerable. Phase 3 is go, Kim reported to Admiral Webb. The fleet is fragmented and unable to coordinate. Most ships are disabled or running on minimal crew. Webb's response came immediately. All units begin Phase 3. Time to show them what happens when you threaten humanity. Across the star system, human ships that had been pretending to flee suddenly turned and attacked their pursuers. But these weren't the same human vessels the Kethavar had been chasing. During the confusion of the neural attacks, Admiral Webb had deployed his military fleet, positioning them to catch the aliens in a devastating crossfire. The human ships were smaller and less armored than their alien counterparts, but they moved with a coordination and flexibility that the rigid Kethavar formations couldn't match. More importantly, they were targeting ships whose crews were paralyzed or severely reduced in number. Captain Torres watched as her converted cargo hauler delivered the killing blow to a massive Kethavar battleship. The alien vessel had enough firepower to destroy a dozen human ships, but with most of its crew incapacitated, it could barely return fire. Target destroyed, she reported with grim satisfaction, moving to assist the Wellington with their target. The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. An inferior force was systematically destroying a vastly superior enemy through tactics, technology, and sheer audacity. The Kethavar, who had conquered dozens of worlds through intimidation and brute force, found themselves helpless against an enemy that refused to be intimidated. Fleet Commander Zekthar watched his mighty armada being torn apart ship by ship. For the first time in his long military career, he felt something he had never experienced before: fear. The humans weren't just defending themselves. They were hunting his forces with the same merciless efficiency his own people had once shown to their victims. And there was nothing he could do to stop them. As another of his command ships exploded in a ball of plasma fire, Zekthar finally understood what Commander Thakmor must have felt in his final moments. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price for that arrogance. The apex predators had become the prey. The battle in Proxima Centauri system raged for 18 hours, but the outcome had been decided in the first 30 minutes. By the time Fleet Commander Zekthar managed to restore partial communications to his remaining ships, over 90% of his fleet was either destroyed or captured by human forces. Admiral Webb stood on the bridge of the UES Valiant, watching as the last Kethavar resistance crumbled. The alien flagship Eternal Hunger hung dead in space, its massive hull scarred by weapons fire, and its crew struggling to maintain basic life support without their neural implants. Casualties? Webb asked his staff. Surprisingly light, sir, reported Commander Hayes. 43 ships lost, mostly civilian vessels that couldn't reach cover in time. Total crew losses under 800. The neural disruptors were even more effective than Dr. Harrison predicted. Webb nodded, but he felt no satisfaction in the victory. Every human life lost was a tragedy, and he knew this battle was only the beginning. The Kethavar were a galactic power with hundreds of fleets. Defeating one armada would only make them more dangerous. What's the status of our prisoners? Over 30,000 Kethavar warriors in custody, sir. Most are suffering from neural implant failure, but our medical teams are keeping them stable. Dr. Harrison wants to study their technology to improve our countermeasures. And their commander? Fleet Commander Zekthar is aboard the Eternal Hunger with a skeleton crew. He's requested a parley under the Galactic Warfare Conventions. Webb considered this. The Kethavar had never honored those conventions with other species, but their request suggested they understood the magnitude of their defeat. Perhaps they could be reasoned with. Transport him to the Valiant, full security protocols, but treat him as a legitimate prisoner of war. 2 hours later, Fleet Commander Zekthar was escorted into the Valiant's briefing room. The alien commander was impressive even in defeat, his chitinous armor gleaming under the ship's lights. But Webb could see uncertainty in his compound eyes, a new emotion for a species that had known only victory. Admiral Webb, Zekthar spoke in accented but clear English. Your reputation precedes you. I am told you were once a teacher before you became a warrior. Dr. Chen was one of my students, Webb replied coldly. She died buying humanity the knowledge we needed to defeat you. Zekthar's mandibles clicked in what might have been respect. The female researcher. She fought well for her species. Commander Thackamore spoke of her before. He paused. Before his ship was destroyed. What do you want, Zekthar? To understand how this happened. My fleet was the finest in the Kethvar Armada. We have conquered 73 worlds without a single defeat. Your species was supposed to be primitive, barely capable of interstellar travel. Webb leaned back in his chair. You made the same mistake every predator makes. You assumed your prey couldn't fight back. But your ships are inferior. Your weapons are less advanced. By every military measure, we should have annihilated you. Military measures, Webb repeated. There's your problem. You think like conquerors, not like survivors. Humans spent millions of years as prey animals on one of the galaxy's most dangerous worlds. We learned to be smarter, not stronger. Zekthar was silent for a long moment. The neural disruptors. How did you develop them so quickly? We didn't. The technology was given to us by the species you've been hunting to extinction. They left instructions buried on dozens of worlds, waiting for someone smart enough to find them and desperate enough to use them. The alien commander's eyes widened in surprise. Impossible. We destroyed all trace of the inferior races. Their worlds are ash, their technologies lost. Their bodies are ash, Webb corrected. Their knowledge survived. Every civilization you've destroyed left behind clues for the next species to find. You've been creating your own enemies without realizing it. Webb activated a holographic display showing the artifacts discovered beneath Europa's ice. Similar structures had been found on 17 other worlds in human space. All of them former Kethvar conquest sites. The beings you call inferior races were actually highly advanced, civilizations working together against a common threat. They knew they couldn't defeat you directly, so they planted the seeds of your destruction for future generations to discover. Zekthar stared at the display in horror. You speak of a conspiracy spanning millennia. Such coordination is impossible, not for species fighting for survival. When extinction is the alternative, you'll work with anyone who can help you live another day. Webb's voice carried the weight of hard-won experience. That's something conquerors never understand. The alien commander slumped in his restraints. What happens now? Will you execute us as we would have executed you? That's what your people would do, Webb agreed. But humans don't work that way. We're going to study your technology, learn from your tactics, and prepare for the next Kethvar fleet that comes looking for revenge. You think more fleets will come? I know they will. Your people don't forgive defeats, and they certainly don't forgive being outsmarted by inferior species. The question is whether you'll help us prepare for them. Zekthar's mandibles clicked in confusion. Help you? Why would I betray my own people? Because your people are going to lose this war, Webb said bluntly. The technology that defeated your fleet is already spreading to every human colony. Within months, we'll have the capability to disable any Kethvar ship that enters our space. Webb stood and moved to the viewport, gesturing at the debris field that had once been a mighty alien armada. More importantly, we're not keeping this technology to ourselves. Every species in the galaxy that's lost worlds to the Kethvar is about to receive detailed instructions on building neural disruptors. The implications hit Zekthar like a physical blow. You would arm our enemies? I would arm your victims. There's a difference. Webb turned back to face the alien commander. Your people have spent centuries creating enemies across the galaxy. Now those enemies have a weapon that can level the playing field. The High Command will never accept this. They will send everything they have to destroy you. Let them come. Each fleet they send will be another opportunity to capture their technology and improve our defenses. Eventually, they'll run out of ships and will start visiting their homeworlds. Webb's tone was matter-of-fact, as if he were discussing routine military logistics rather than the destruction of a galactic empire. The calm certainty in his voice seemed to unnerve Zekthar more than any threat could have. You're insane, the alien whispered. You speak of conquering the Kethvar as if it were inevitable. Not conquering, liberating. Webb returned to his seat. Every world you've taken, every species you've enslaved, every civilization you've destroyed left survivors. Hidden colonies, refugee fleets, resistance cells operating in the deep space between stars. They've all been waiting for someone to give them hope. The holographic display changed to show a map of the galaxy with thousands of red dots marking Kethvar-controlled systems. As Webb spoke, Blue dots began appearing throughout the display, representing hidden human forces and potential allies. Your empire is vast but brittle. It's held together by fear and superior technology. Take away the technological advantage and the fear turns to anger. Angry people don't stay conquered very long. Zekthar studied the display with growing horror. These refugee populations, they number in the billions. And now they all have access to neural disruptor technology. Your ground forces, your occupation armies, your entire military structure depends on cybernetic enhancements. In a few months, every resistance cell in the galaxy will be able to shut down your soldiers with a simple electromagnetic pulse. Webb leaned forward, his eyes never leaving the alien commander's face. Your people have a choice, Zekthar. Help us transition to a new galactic order peacefully, or watch your empire burn from within as every world you've conquered rises up against you. The alien commander sat in stunned silence, finally understanding the true scope of his defeat. The humans hadn't just won a battle. They had started a revolution that would reshape the entire galaxy. For the first time in Kethvar history, the apex predators were facing extinction. What would you have me do? Zekthar asked quietly. Webb smiled, and for the first time since the crisis began, it reached his eyes. Help us save your people from themselves, starting with a complete tactical analysis of every Kethvar stronghold in this sector. The revolution had begun. 6 months after the Battle of Proxima Centauri, the galaxy was in chaos. Admiral Webb stood in the command center of the newly established Liberation Fleet headquarters, watching reports pour in from across known space. Every screen showed the same pattern: Kethvar occupation forces falling to coordinated uprisings, their cybernetic advantages neutralized by neural disruptor technology. Status report, Webb called to his expanded staff. Captain Torres, now promoted to Rear Admiral, consulted her tactical displays. 47 worlds have successfully liberated themselves in the past month alone. The Altarian resistance managed to disable an entire Kethvar garrison using modified communications equipment. The Vegan colonies reported complete success in their operation against the planetary governor's compound. Dr. Harrison looked up from his research station, exhaustion evident in his face but excitement in his voice. We've received modification reports from over 300 species, Admiral. Each one has adapted the neural disruptor technology to work with their existing equipment. Some of the innovations are quite remarkable. Webb nodded approvingly. The decision to freely distribute the anti-Kethvar technology had been controversial among some human leaders. They argued that giving away such a powerful weapon might eventually be used against humanity. Webb had countered that keeping it secret would ensure humanity remained alone against the inevitable Kethvar counterattack. What about Kethvar response? Commander Kim, recently returned from a deep reconnaissance mission, stepped forward. They're fracturing, sir. The High Command is demanding immediate military responses to every uprising, but their regional commanders are having to choose between protecting their own strongholds and supporting operations elsewhere. Translation? They're spread too thin. 3 centuries of conquest left them holding too much territory with too few loyal forces. When their technological advantage disappeared, their empire started collapsing under its own weight. Webb studied the galactic map displaying real-time intelligence. Red zones marking Kethvar control were shrinking daily, replaced by blue zones representing liberated worlds and yellow zones showing active resistance movements. But there were also disturbing dark spots where entire systems had gone silent. What about the dark zones? Dr. Harrison's expression grew grim. We're not sure. Some appear to be systems where the Kethvar have implemented scorched earth policies, destroying everything rather than losing control. Others might be planets where the liberation attempts failed catastrophically. Or, Kim added quietly, places where the Kethvar have deployed something new. Our intelligence suggests they're developing countermeasures to the neural disruptors. Webb had been expecting this. The Kethvar were too intelligent and too ruthless to simply accept defeat. They would adapt, evolve, and find new ways to maintain their dominance. The question was whether the liberated worlds could unite fast enough to face the counterattack. Any word from Fleet Commander Zekthar? Torres nodded toward a secured communication station. He's been coordinating with resistance cells on 17 different worlds. His knowledge of Kethvar military doctrine has prevented at least 3 major disasters, but he's also warning us about something called the Final Protocol. Webb felt a chill run down his spine. Explain. Kim activated a holographic display showing intelligence reports from various sources. According to Zekthar, the Kethvar High Command has a contingency plan for dealing with galaxy-wide rebellion. If they can't maintain control through conventional forces, they activate something called the Purge Fleet, which is automated dreadnoughts designed to sterilize entire star systems. No crews to be affected by neural disruptors, no communications arrays to be hacked, just pure destructive power programmed to eliminate all life in target areas. The command center fell silent. Webb stared at the display, calculating the implications. If the Kethvar were willing to destroy everything they couldn't control, the liberation movement had succeeded only in triggering a galactic genocide. How many ships in this purge fleet? Unknown, Kim replied. Zekthar says the information is restricted to the highest levels of the High Command, but he estimates at least several hundred fully automated vessels, each capable of destroying a planet. Webb made his decision. Signal all Liberation Fleet commanders. We're advancing the timeline. Instead of waiting for more worlds to liberate themselves, we're going to hit the Kethvar command structure directly. Torres looked up in surprise. Sir, we agreed to focus on supporting local resistance movements. A direct assault on Kethvar space would require everything we have, Webb finished, along with every allied ship we can gather. Dr. Harrison, how quickly can you weaponize the neural disruptor technology for large-scale deployment? Define large-scale, system-wide coverage. If we're going to attack the Kethvar homeworld, I want every cybernetic implant in the entire star system shut down simultaneously. Harrison's eyes widened. That would require a coordinated burst from multiple ships positioned throughout the system. The power requirements alone... He paused, running calculations in his head. It's possible, but we'd need at least 50 ships with modified transmitter arrays. You'll have 100, Webb promised. Commander Kim, I need a complete tactical analysis of the Kethvar home system. Defenses, fleet positions, civilian populations, everything. Admiral, Torres interjected. Attacking their homeworld could trigger the very genocide we're trying to prevent. Could, Webb agreed. But if we let them complete their preparations, we'll face those automated dreadnoughts anyway. This way, we at least have a chance to stop the Purge Fleet before it deploys. Webb turned to address the entire command center. Ladies and gentlemen, for 6 months we've been playing defense, supporting resistance movements, and liberating individual worlds. That strategy has been successful, but it's also given the Kethvar time to develop countermeasures. He gestured at the galactic map. Dr. Chen died to give us the information we needed to level the playing field. Now it's time to use that advantage while we still have it. We're going to end this war by striking at the heart of their empire. The staff began moving with renewed purpose, but Webb caught sight of a priority message indicator on his personal console. The transmission was heavily encrypted and marked with codes he hadn't seen since the earliest days of the crisis. The message was from Zekthar, but not through official channels. This was a personal communication, sent through underground networks used by resistance cells throughout Kethvar space. Admiral Webb, the message began, I have learned something that changes everything. The Purge Fleet is not the Kethvar's final weapon. It is their escape plan. They intend to use the automated dreadnoughts to destroy all evidence of their empire while the High Command flees to a hidden stronghold. Beyond the galactic rim, Webb read the rest of the message with growing alarm. According to Zekthar, the Kethvar had been preparing for the possibility of defeat for centuries. They had established secret colonies in distant galaxies, stockpiled resources and technology, and created contingency plans that would allow them to return when the current galaxy was depopulated and defenseless. The liberation of our conquered worlds was always anticipated, the message continued. The High Command believes that inferior species will eventually destroy each other, fighting over the ruins of our empire. They plan to return in 1,000 years to reclaim a galaxy empty of resistance. Webb set down the message and stared at the tactical displays with new understanding. The Kethvar weren't just facing military defeat. They were implementing a strategic withdrawal that would leave the entire galaxy in ruins while they waited safely in exile unless someone stopped them. Webb began composing orders for what would become known as the Battle of the Core Worlds. It would be the largest military operation in galactic history, involving thousands of ships from hundreds of different species. The outcome would determine not just the fate of the current war, but the future of all intelligent life in the galaxy. The final confrontation was about to begin, and this time there would be no escape for the apex predators. As he worked, Webb thought about Dr. Chen's sacrifice on Europa. She had died believing that her death would save humanity. Now it appeared her sacrifice might save every species in the galaxy from extinction. The ultimate test of human ingenuity and determination was yet to come. The armada that assembled at the edge of Kethvar space was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Ships from 400 different species hung in formation, their diverse designs creating a tapestry of technological evolution. Human vessels floated alongside Altarian crystal ships, vegan biocruisers, and dozens of other exotic designs that represented the combined will of the oppressed. Admiral Webb stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, Sarah Chen's name etched into a memorial plaque beside the captain's chair. Around him, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, their faces showing the determination of people who understood. They were about to participate in the most important battle in galactic history. Fleet. Status report, Webb requested. 7,437 ships reporting ready for combat, announced Admiral Torres. Neural disruptor arrays are synchronized and calibrated. All vessels have confirmed receipt of tactical coordination protocols. Webb nodded and opened a channel to Fleet Commander Zekthar, who had volunteered to serve as tactical advisor, despite the obvious danger to his own life. The Kethvar commander's decision to side with the Liberation Forces had been met with suspicion by many Allied leaders, but Webb trusted him. Zekthar had already risked everything to provide intelligence that had saved millions of lives. Zekthar, what's the current status of the Purge Fleet? The alien commander's image appeared on the main screen, his compound eyes reflecting the bridge lights. My contacts within the High Command report final preparations are nearly complete. The automated dreadnoughts are being moved into position around the primary strongholds. Once activated, they will have 96 hours to complete their sterilization protocols before the High Command evacuates to their extragalactic refuge, meaning we have 96 hours to disable them all, or watch the galaxy burn, Webb said grimly. Admiral, interrupted Dr. Harrison from his science station, I've been analyzing the technical specifications Zekthar provided. These dreadnoughts are more advanced than anything we've encountered. They're specifically designed to be immune to our neural disruptor technology. Webb felt the weight of command pressing down on him. They had assembled the largest fleet in galactic history, but their primary weapon might be useless against the enemy's ultimate response. Options? The dreadnoughts have no organic crews, so neural disruption won't work. But they do have quantum processing cores that control their targeting and navigation systems. If we could get close enough to deploy electromagnetic pulse weapons directly against their hulls, they'd be sitting ducks, Torres finished. But getting close enough would require someone to survive their defensive systems long enough to deliver the pulse charges. Webb studied the tactical displays showing the Kethvar home system. The enemy had positioned their dreadnoughts in a defensive shell around their core worlds, with overlapping fields of fire that could destroy anything attempting to approach. Even with 7,000 ships, a direct assault would result in catastrophic losses. Commander Kim spoke up from her position at the intelligence station. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the resistance cells within the Kethvar home system. They're reporting unusual activity around the High Command bunkers. Define unusual. Mass evacuations of civilian populations. The Kethvar appeared to be abandoning their own people along with everyone else. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. The Kethvar High Command was willing to sacrifice even their own species to ensure their escape. They had moved beyond military conquest into pure survival mode, caring nothing for the billions of their own people who would die in the coming purge. Webb made his decision. Signal the fleet. We're going in. Admiral, Torres protested. The casualties will be enormous. The casualties will be worse if we wait. Dr. Harrison, begin preparations for maximum neural disruptor deployment. I want every Kethvar with cybernetic implants in that system disabled the moment we enter their space. That includes Zekthar and any other defectors working with resistance cells, Dr. Harrison warned. Webb looked at the Kethvar commander's image on the screen. Your call, Fleet Commander. You can withdraw to a safe distance, or you can disable your implants and trust our medical teams to keep you alive. Zekthar's mandibles clicked in what Webb had learned was the equivalent of a smile. Admiral, I have spent my entire life as a conqueror. Perhaps it is time to learn what it means to be a liberator. The massive fleet began moving toward the Kethvar home system, ships spreading into attack formations that would have been impossible without the quantum communication networks shared among Allied forces. As they approached the system's edge, long-range sensors began detecting the enemy's defenses. "Mother of God," whispered the sensor operator. "Admiral, we're reading over 200 automated dreadnoughts positioned throughout the system, and they're already beginning activation sequences." Webb felt his heart skip a beat. They were too late. The Purge fleet was coming online, and in a matter of hours, it would begin the systematic destruction of everything the liberation movement had fought to save. "All ships, emergency acceleration. We need to reach those dreadnoughts before they achieve full operational status." The Allied fleet surged forward, their diverse propulsion systems creating a spectacular display of light and energy. But even as they raced toward their targets, the automated dreadnoughts were powering up their weapon systems and beginning to move toward predetermined target coordinates. "Admiral," Dr. Harrison called out urgently, "I'm detecting massive energy buildup in the dreadnought's primary weapons. They're preparing to fire on the liberated worlds." Webb realized with growing horror that the Kethvar plan was even more brutal than they had imagined. The High Command wasn't waiting for their escape to be complete before beginning the purge. They were starting the genocide immediately, knowing that even if the Allied fleet succeeded in destroying the dreadnoughts, billions would die in the process. All ships with enhanced engines, break formation and intercept the dreadnoughts moving toward inhabited systems. Everyone else continued toward the command centers. "We need to shut down their coordination networks." The fleet split into multiple attack groups, each racing toward different objectives. The fastest ships, mostly human vessels modified with captured Kethvar technology, streaked toward the dreadnoughts that were already moving toward their first targets. Captain Torres commanded one of these intercept groups, her ship the New Edinburgh leading a squadron of converted civilian vessels toward a cluster of dreadnoughts approaching the Altarian system. The automated ships were massive, each one larger than a human battleship, their hulls bristling with weapon systems that could crack planets. "Deploy neural disruptors on my mark," Torres ordered. "Even if they don't affect the main systems, they might disrupt secondary functions." The Allied ships opened fire with everything they had, neural disruptor beams lancing out toward the dreadnoughts. To everyone's surprise, the automated ships immediately began showing signs of system instability. Their formation wavered, their targeting systems flickered, and several ships actually collided with each other. "It's working," Torres announced over the fleet communication network. "The neural disruptors are affecting their quantum processing cores." Admiral Webb felt a surge of hope. Dr. Harrison had been wrong about the dreadnoughts' immunity to their weapons. The automated ships were vulnerable after all. All ships concentrate neural disruptor fire on the dreadnoughts. Ignore their defensive systems and focus on overwhelming their processing capabilities. The battle that followed was unlike anything in military history. Thousands of ships from hundreds of different species working in perfect coordination, their combined neural disruptor arrays creating interference patterns that shut down the most advanced automated weapons ever built. One by one, the dreadnoughts went dark, their massive hulls drifting powerless as their quantum minds were overwhelmed by directed electromagnetic chaos. The Purge fleet, designed to be the ultimate expression of Kethvar power, was defeated by the same technology that had saved Dr. Sarah Chen's research 6 months earlier. But the battle was far from over. Deep within the Kethvar home system, the High Command bunkers were beginning their evacuation procedures. If they escaped to their extragalactic refuge, they would eventually return to finish what they had started. Admiral Webb opened a fleet-wide channel. "All ships, we have approximately 12 hours before the High Command completes their evacuation. This is our only chance to end the Kethvar threat permanently." The Allied fleet, now reduced to fewer than 6,000 ships after the brutal fight with the dreadnoughts, began its final assault on the core worlds of an empire that had dominated the galaxy for centuries. The last battle was about to begin, and the fate of every living being in the galaxy hung in the balance. Dr. Chen's sacrifice on Europa had begun a chain of events that would either free the galaxy from tyranny or witness its complete destruction. There would be no second chances, no backup plans, no escape for either side. The apex predators and their prey would finally face each other in a conflict that would determine the future of all intelligent life. As the Allied fleet closed in on their final targets, Webb thought of the vault on Europa where it all began. A single woman, dismissed and ignored by her enemies, had paid no mercy to an apex predator. Now her legacy would determine whether humanity and its allies could do the same to an entire empire. The revolution that had started in a research station buried in ice was about to end in the heart of the galaxy's greatest evil. And this time there would be no prisoners taken.